Welcome everybody. Happy Friday. Happy almost Thanksgiving weekend. And about the rest of you, but we are dialing things back a tiny bit here. Okay, so first things first, self-promotion. Not everybody's favorite thing to do, as I already know. So I actually thought we would find out why. We sent out a survey ahead of time for the show and got a couple of responses back, but I'd love to hear the general thoughts of the room. And so if you haven't done this before, and of course I changed something right before the show, there we go. I would love you all to help me figure out how to use my computer properly. Open a new browser window or pull up on your phone or whatever it is and go to slido.com and enter code 33221, because we're going to have another question at the end of this program, because I would love to hear from you. Because my question today, so that we can get aligned, is why do you find self-promotion hard and or difficult and or fill in whatever word appropriately works for you? We've got a you can click all of them if they're
I think all of them.
Not confident, uncomfortable. It's a very common one. Anybody, show of hands, kind of go, ugh, I feel icky when I do it. Not an unusual reaction across all of this. Okay, so the ickiness is the biggest factor. Well, I'm going to start out with the general rules and manners that our moms and grandmas and people started with. And when it comes to self-promotion, one of the things I want you all to forgive yourself on is that this idea of self-promotion is a bad thing. My belief is the only time it starts to be a bad thing is that if you are only ever serving yourself. And my guess across the board in this room, because I've had conversations with a couple of you guys and all of those sorts of things, is that when you are trying to promote yourself, it's actually in the act of service. Now, there are absolutely people out there who are like, I'm fantastic and you should look at me all the time. And it's really for an ego-based process. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm really talking about service here. And when you start to reframe the thinking about what it is you're trying to accomplish and what it is you're trying to do, I believe that the ickiness starts to disseminate, because you think about, like, if you sit here and think about, like, who are you a fan of? Are you a fan of Oprah, or are you a fan of the Obama family, or are you a fan of Elon Musk? All very good at promoting themselves, right? I actually think that Oprah specifically is a genius at this. And would anybody say that Oprah's self-promoting activities are icky and don't feel genuine? Yeah, like, she's got a magazine with her name on the front, and take it to a whole extra level, her face is the only face ever on the magazine. I think like maybe once or twice she's had somebody else's face out there. But she always does that in service. And I also sit here and say, like, as an example, and I'm not saying you all need to grow up and be Oprah when you grow up, but when you are known, you can have impact. And I heard an amazing story a couple of years ago, actually, when I was very first starting out. I was having drinks in my backyard with some of my awesome lady people friends. And we were talking about each of our own journeys and telling the story. And one of them showed this amazing story about a friend of hers who had been hired by the US government to basically be the entertainment slash tour guide slash event producer for this Saudi organization. She was specifically responsible for doing all of the programming and entertainment for all of the women involved in this Saudi organization. And she said she had gone to Saudi Arabia and had been putting all of this thing together and was all like, look at me. I am all that in a bag of chips because here I am doing really impactful work with the US government in Saudi Arabia. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And as part of the program, they actually had to travel from one part of the country to another, and it required driving through a desert. And so they went in this big caravan of fancy cars driving across the desert. And as they were heading across, a sandstorm started to create. However they do that. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I have not been in a sandstorm, but I can imagine because I've seen enough of those crazy movies, right? And basically, they had to stop the caravan, and the sandstorm passed. And this individual said that the darkness and the claustrophobia and the kind of fear of all of the sand and the noise and being on all of this completely freaked her out. And so she was like, I had to get out of the car because I was feeling so claustrophobic and needed to take deep breaths. And so she got out of the car, and almost immediately everybody started freaking out, and they were like, get back in the car, get back in the car, get back in the car. And like guns started appearing in all sorts of places. And she was like, no, I have to breathe, I have to breathe. And she said, I was standing there trying to breathe, and I heard a voice in the background. And she was like, wait a second, I recognize that voice from somewhere. And she said, oh my God, that voice is Oprah. Am I losing my mind? I hear Oprah's voice out in the middle of the desert somewhere. And so she was like, I had to find out where the voice was coming from. So she climbed to really what was the top of a sand dune in the area, going towards this voice with everybody freaking out with the guns and all of that sort of stuff. And on the other side of the sand dune was a Bedouin encampment. So camels, tents, et cetera, et cetera. And lo and behold, but they were sitting there watching TV. And what was being streamed by satellite to the TV but Oprah? And that was the voice that she was hearing, which is why so this was Lori Bond, who is an amazing jewelry designer, and Shelby Scarborough, who is, Shelby's done all sorts of things. She just finished launching a book about civility. We all sat there and looked at each other and said, you know what? The goal is not about being known. The goal is actually to have the impact of Oprah. You are really having impact in this world when you are being live streamed into a Bedouin encampment in the middle of nowhere during a sandstorm, right? And so as I think about self-promotion and I think about how are you letting people even know that you exist, that's always where I start framing. I'm sitting here going, okay, am I thinking big enough in the impact of Oprah? Because when you sit here and think about what it is you are trying to accomplish, that for me really gets me out of my head on the whole, oh my God, they will judge me. Oh my goodness, it's unfeminine to brag. Oh my goodness, I'm not supposed to do this. This feels uncomfortable. This feels weird. Because I sit here and I go, do I think I'm going to be live streamed into a Bedouin encampment in the middle of Saudi Arabia? Probably not. But if I release myself from all of the shackles of all of that, maybe I can have some real impact. Because you come back to what many of you guys have heard me say, which is this: every decision made about you and your opportunities are made in a room that you're not in. A bunch of Bedouin travelers decided to let Oprah into their room. The very first question I always ask people is, are you in the consideration set? Do they even know that you exist? And just because your boss is in the room And or just because somebody you have spoken to is in the room doesn't necessarily mean they're talking to you. And so when you're thinking about how to make it easy for other people to say yes to the future you, which is what I want for all of you guys, the first thing I always come back to, beyond the why are you awesome, et cetera, is do they even know you exist? And if they do, what are they saying about you? And the only way they can learn is to be taught. So let's now shift a little bit to the teaching part of it and the reframe. And just as a reminder, I've put a lot of the questions and the comments that I'm going to make today in the conversation guide, which you should have already had from signing up for the show. But I know Kylie's going to drop it into the chat. So the first reframe I want you to think about is what are you teaching people? So we are actually teaching people who you are and what you're all about all day, every day. Every single conversation you have, somebody's going to have a memory of you. And if you go through the value adventure or some of the experience with us, you'll find out that one of the first things we make you do is to go ask people what it is they remember, what your personal brand is, all of those sorts of things. And so as you're thinking about that, I sit here and I go, are you intentful about what it is you are teaching people? And especially because my guess is many of you are either in transition or well, my theory is you're either bored in what it is you're doing and you're like, there needs to be something new, or you're stuck and you're not quite sure what the new thing is, or you are living in 2020, which basically means all the rules have changed anyway. So we're all going through this new thing. And so what is the future you that you are trying to teach somebody? And when you think about the word teach, it becomes much less about promote. The second reframe, and this is really getting in your head, is actually taking it from I might be awesome to I am awesome. And if you think about, like, if you can imagine for a second, anybody who has taught you something recently, they didn't need a certificate, they didn't need a label, they didn't need any sort of validation from anybody else to give you advice. And when it comes from a good place and it comes from experience and people are asking, then your information is absolutely valuable. And I think, when you sit here and go, yes, I am actually awesome, and what am I teaching people? Things start to get better. So how do we start doing that? So I want to start in those two reframes the opposite way around and start with you guys first. So how do you start thinking about the I am awesome part of this and start getting, like, how many of you guys have that thing in your head that just goes, nope, you can't do this. No, 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 no. And there's a confidence issue just by a raise of hands. A couple of you guys? We've got super confident people, sort of, kind of. Because I know when we sent the pre-questions out to people. And so for those of you who are coming to future shows, just a reminder, when we send these, I do look at these answers. One of the questions we got was, when is it too much? How much should I do? Et cetera, et cetera. So the first thing when you're thinking about the why am I awesome that I always challenge you to do is, one, get practiced at talking about yourself. While I've just said you are teaching people who you are and what you're about all the time, all day, every day, how many of you have spoken to somebody in the last 24 hours and actually shared your genius with somebody intentfully? Lisa, you've done it, sort of, kind of. Can you share what you did?
I was at an intercultural dialogue game Zoom conference thing, and there was a room full of international people from all around the world, and I was just sharing my story, and right off the bat, people knew that I loved food, and I loved intercultural dialogues, and that I know many intercultural things. And so I just realize that without saying that I am this and this and I have expertise in this and this, they got it through the vocabulary and enthusiasm when I shared my intercultural story.
That's awesome. And
And
is
that
that
happened
the, like, if you
yesterday.
come back to food and being, let's actually call this out, an intercultural expert, is that what you wanted them to remember about you?
Um, yes and no. I mean, I feel like it's one of my talents and one of my passions, but I just hope it's not the only thing they remember about me. But again, I wasn't in a environment where I was trying to, being promoted or anything, but I just thought it was great to see that I conveyed that throughout my stories without thinking, that was the impression that I was trying to deliver.
Okay. So I actually want to unpack that because I think this is a really interesting feedback. So you went in, had to introduce yourself. You did actually leave an impression of what it is you remember. And this is why we're having this show. I actually believe you need to really sit here and say, okay, what is it I want to teach people in every opportunity? Because you never know when an opportunity is going to come out. So it doesn't have to be everything. And I know many of you have heard, like, finding the right balance is really challenging, but you need to be recognizable enough so people go, "Ooh, that's interesting," but original enough that it's you. It doesn't need to be everything, because you sit here and say, "Okay, like, well, so what would?" Let's actually ask the question, Lisa. If you had knocked it out the park, what would you want them to remember about you? I think you did a pretty good job,
Um,
personally.
I mean, I guess intercultural is fine in itself, but I think primarily for me that the three cultures that I am actually an expert of, like, so it would be US, Mexico, and Japan. And I gave stories about that. So maybe the specifying the countries more is a learning point for me to really say that those are the three areas that I'm an expert of. But I do agree that the intercultural theme was there, and I did a pretty good job with delivering that part.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I share this, like, that's a really great, like, having, if you want a framework around what to, like, how do you say, like, how much should I share? How much is too much? How much is not enough? I'm a really big fan of the three. It's a bit like if you're in interior design, they always say do things threes because people can remember. Lisa, a really great example that you've got three that you can share, and I could almost see the interesting overlap, and there's some pretty dramatic differences between US, it was US, Japan, and what was the third one?
Mexico.
Mexico, right. As you go through and coming back to you, how much, just having this chat right now, how much more confident do you feel about sharing that with people?
I'm pretty confident. Like, it's not nerve wracking to talk to you in this room, which is saying something right now. But yeah, just I think your word of being intentional about it, and then I like the framework of, what do you want to teach other people. I come from an education background, so that definitely is way better than having to sell myself or promote it and
Yeah,
using that kind
it's
of language.
and I share this, and the reason I asked that question is I know lots of people get a little wound up in, like, well, what is it I'm supposed to say? What are the perfect words? How do I think about the situation? And the reality is that context in every single situation matters. Every single situation matters. And so the goal is not to come out with not necessarily perfect language. And I know, like, fairy godmother all day. I'm always about creating great language. You'll notice when I do these, I'm never exactly the same on the language because the context of the situation matters. So, coming into any engagement where you have an opportunity to teach somebody why you are uniquely awesome, sitting here and saying, one, what is it I need to actually accomplish? Like, the question is always, what is it I want them to remember? And of course, why would they care? Why would the other person, like, would the other person be interested to find out? Now, something Lisa did is she talked about food as well, which then makes a nice connective tissue. Maybe somebody's interested in food as well, but really thinking about what is the situation and how could you have the conversation? And am I intentionally just leaving a nugget that someone could remember? I had I'm on half a zillion different online groups and chat organizations, and had a really great example this morning where somebody was actually applying for a job. And as part of it, it was a government role. And as part of the application process, they had to answer, I think, like 5 or 6 essay questions. And in the process, they were told, we are just going to be reviewing the essay questions. That's all there is. Don't apply any other way. But the individual is given the opportunity to upload a document, like upload something to her application. And so she threw the question out to the group I'm on and said, hey, hiring guru people, do you think I should add my resume or a cover letter or something like that? And my comment back to her was, this is an application process. And if you think about how people are making decisions in hiring, the first step is, are you part of the consideration set, like the actual application itself? The second is that review step. And the obvious next step is actually going to be an in-person interview. There's no way they're going to hire anybody without having a conversation. And so if you think about that sales funnel, the step from application to interview, which is the next step, is just a filtering. They're probably going to have, I don't know, the average job is getting about 150 applications. They've gated that a little by saying, answer these 5 essay questions. So my guess is they may have 20. You even sit down and say, oh my gosh, I have to go through 20 interviews. They probably are going to filter it down to maybe 5 or 10. And so I said to the individual, I said, your goal is to get in that next level so that you can have a conversation with somebody. Because I have no doubt that if you can have a conversation with somebody, you can do an even better job. And I said, so then the question is, if 20 or 150, again, the question is, what do you want people to remember? And I said, they've gotten 5 essay questions, which my guess is they're going to hear very similar answers from people across the board because they're very specific questions to the job. And I said, so maybe you can create a graphic for yourself that actually talks about either the answer to one of the questions. Can you create a graphic that actually highlights and improves one of the questions, and not only helps somebody visually see your value, but also where you line in on this? Or just a graphic to say, look, here is the intersection of my 3 key areas of expertise. In Lisa's case, it's the international piece. And so really taking this idea of, how do I teach somebody what they need to remember about you, really helps there. Before I move on to audience piece, does anybody have questions and or comments on the confidence piece and getting the inner critic voice to hush in your head? Just give me a wave at the screen. No? Awesome. Pro tip on what I delightfully call the itty bitty shitty committee. I am a big fan of saying out loud 1 time per day why you are awesome. Because the other thing is that little jerk in your head needs reteaching too. Often we question ourselves, we get wound up in all sorts of inner stories about who we are and why we're great. And sometimes we just need reminding too. There's a lovely conversation somebody was having the other day about, look, if we were actually friends, if the person in our head was actually one of our friends, we would have broken up with them years ago, because they're generally not nice people. I think it's a good check, but do chat back with that voice and go, no, actually you are. It's also why I'm a big fan of keeping this little sucker. This is as much for you as it is for me, to remind me that I have magic skills. So whatever works for you. I use graphics all the time. Okay, so the last thing, only because I have a note in here because somebody have a question on how much is too much on the, let's not call it self-promotion, but reteaching. The question I think that brings is, well, there's two pieces. How much is the, what of you do you need to share? Again, what is it you want them to remember? And if you're asking them to remember more than 2 to 3 things, you're asking too much. And what you share is dependent on what your strategy is and what it is you need to teach. So as an example, if you are trying to share, like if you've got lots of different decision makers who might care about different things, how do you keep as much of it consistent, but then also unique to the individual, without selling a different product to every single person? Because this is the, I talked about the fine line between being recognizable enough that somebody goes, oh, I get that, but also original enough that it's you. The other fine line that you are all going to have to navigate in self-promotion is, am I consistent enough so that when other people are having conversations, they're seeing the same person show up over and over again? But am I being original enough so that I'm not being a boring same? I'm trying to think of like a real world example. Like the difference between us and tennis shoes is we are actually different for each individual scenario and situation. You're not a robot. And so unlike, I think, Nike, McDonald's, Coca-Cola have done a really good job about being consistent about their brand, you're a human being, you've got a little bit more nuance to it. But then you sit here and say, has Oprah been consistent about her brand? I'd give her well, now she gets an A for who she is and what she's all about, but she's even gone through an evolution. If I asked you what Elon Musk was known for, we'd be pretty consistent there. So it's finding that balance between the two. There's never a complete right or wrong answer. So the other part of this whole idea of self-promotion is also really anchoring into, why would the other person care? So often I hear people say, but I've got this brilliant thing that I need to make sure people know about. And they share it with somebody and then they go, yeah, that's nice. And they don't do anything. It's because you haven't actually tapped into the other person's why. And this step is often really difficult because you hang out, like you are so clear about the why that it's often hard for you to see the why nots. And this is where I highly, highly, highly recommend, whether you work with us, because this is what we do, or if you go find some champions in your network who can help you with this. And what I mean by champions in your network, if you've been to some of our other shows, you've heard me talk about transformation guides or adventure guides. And these are people who are already fans of you and already believe in your potential, who can be sounding boards that you can share information with. And so actually reaching out to them and saying, hey, I want to practice talking about who I am and why I'm awesome. Can I practice it with you so that you can get feedback? And then specifically ask the question, what do you remember? As opposed to what do you think, which I'm going to unpack in a second. So who's already in the process of teaching their audience, who's a bit stuck with it, who would like to do a little demo with that? Anybody? Samantha, I saw you put your hand up. You want to unmute? All right. What do you, oh, we lost you. Hello.
Oh,
Okay, Samantha, what is it you are trying to teach people about you? Oh, we're going to give it one more second. We're going to get you back.
am I unmuted?
You are unmuted, but we can't see you, but I guess we will figure this out. If you can put the camera on, that would be awesome.
Okay,
Oh, there we
on,
go.
but hear me?
Yes. Okay, so Samantha, what is it you are trying to teach people about you?
I would like to teach them how I can help them and what I do for them.
Okay, so what are you saying today? So you are now getting introduced to a whole room of people virtually. Um, how are you doing that today, and where are you getting stuck in the self-promotion piece?
So I'm a chief marketing officer, and so people always ask what a CMO does, and I say that I'm here to cut through the noise. So I'm here to help companies figure out what they do and why it matters to their customers, and we reposition the organization to have compelling communications that allow them to grow their business.
Okay. Very good answer for a CMO. And on the is it recognizable? I'd give you a total thumbs up. Is it original? Not so much. I've talked to lots of CMOs. Here's my question. Is the cut through the noise person who you want to be known for?
I'm not really sure what I want to be known for, but I find my tech background allows me to help companies hone that positioning piece, which
Okay.
is what, because it's words that sell things.
Okay. Well, so I want to back up a second. So because as you are teaching people, you step up and say, like, what is your intent? So I want to come back to that intent question again. You want to help people understand. So I want to help people understand how I can help them is a pretty broad statement, because it could be your neighbor, it could be somebody at a networking event, you could be at a conference, you could be whatever. Like, what's your dream? Like, if you get better at doing this, what happens?
Just more sought after, I would say. I live in a small area with not a lot of these positions. So when I can talk about the value, then I can have people going, oh, wow, I need some of that. I'm
And
usually at,
are you a CMO for hire fractionally or
yeah, I do consult on
okay.
the side.
Okay, so I'm not quite, so here's where I'm stuck. I don't get what product you're trying to get people to understand about you. So are you just trying, like I sit here and I go, like, are you looking for a new job? Are you looking for more consulting opportunities? Or are you just wanting to be more known for being the CMO expert? Let's
I
start
would say needs to come my way, and also to build that credibility piece that when I introduce myself to someone, they understand why they would want a CMO, because most people don't have one.
there. Okay. Well, so I'm sitting here listening to your answers. When I sit here and I go, that sounds like if you're trying to get more business as a consultant and raise awareness for there, you've actually come into one of the first whys. So why would somebody have a CMO? Like, is your target audience people who don't have CMOs today?
Always.
Okay. So coming back to context, what are you trying to do? These are why all of these questions are really important. And I know we've got one specifically here for Samantha, but as I'm asking these questions, I hope you're seeing, like, how do you start to really focus who it is? Samantha, the same way if you were selling a product, you'd be like, who is my target audience? Why do they care? Where are they? How do you message them? All of these questions are exactly the same sort of questions you should apply to you in all of this. So people who don't have CMOs. So let me ask you the question to get something that's original. Why do you think people who don't have CMOs should have one?
Because they want to have marketing that drives results for their business.
And why do you think so I think a lot of people think they're doing marketing that drives results for their business already. What do you think they're not seeing?
Here in Australia, marketing is a little bit behind where it is in North America. I do come from North America. And so there's a lot more random acts of marketing. And that belief in the power of marketing as a revenue generator isn't there because they don't invest in senior levels strategic people to do full cycle marketing from awareness through to purchase, through to engagement and advocacy.
Okay. Ooh, there was a lot there. But I'll tell you what jumped from me is that, and yeah, so Jen actually commented the random acts of marketing Is that your phrase, or is that something you heard from somebody else? No judgment
Uh,
on either.
it's not very popular, so it could be considered original. I'm not sure if I came up with it. It's something I've said for at least 5 years.
Well, then I think you can own it all day. Like that phrase in itself, and this, by the way, is what happens with a lot of people when I talk with them long term, is they end up saying the thing that's actually interesting. And this is why, by the way, also for everybody else, you want to find somebody else to do this to, because we all like, how many of you, and let's give Samantha some really good feedback here for a second. How many of you were like, yeah, Joann, I'm a little bit bored, up until she said the random acts of marketing thing? Yeah, do you see that? Because you were being a bit generic. And then you said the random acts of marketing, and well, I know Jen, you reacted, but how many of you were like, whoa, what is that? This is what I'm talking about, folks. So why not? And Samantha, you said you don't know what you wanted to be known for. Why not set yourself up as the expert of how to not be the random acts of marketing person? I think there's a real opportunity, and it's original to you. Clearly, you've been saying it for a really long time, and that could be an anchor. So I sit here and say, on the self-promotion, instead of you've got a lot in that introduction, and because you're sitting here saying you've got companies who don't have CMOs who might need one, is when you're building a company or when you're building your company, often teams, really trying to put the sentence correctly here. There's a way to frame it when you're building a company, often the first phase of marketing is what I call random acts of marketing, where you're just kind of throwing money at things to see what might work. The reality is that random acts of marketing is just throwing your money away. You might have a win once in a while. It's actually stepping back and saying, almost like a CMO, how can I strategically apply my marketing materials to drive the results I'm looking for? And then your random acts of marketing become impactful acts of marketing. Ooh, I like that one. Like take random and find an opposite word and bridge between the two. And that then is somebody who's not doing, so you'll notice I talked about the CMO in there, but actually pulls out that one thing. I've got CMO, I've got random, and I've got impactful as the anchor words for people to remember, which I didn't do an awesome job of. But do you hear the difference in how to talk about yourself?
I do. I think it's perfect for the market here, and most people would resonate with the idea of random acts of marketing.
Yeah. And for everybody, and this could be, you could be a CPA, you could be an attorney, you could be whatever. One of the most common questions that I'm asking is like, what is the problem the other person needs to solve, and why? And this is why it's always about them. Who is your target audience? And yes, your audiences could be anybody, but the more focused you are with your target audience and who it is you need to have say yes to you, the easier it is for people to say yes to you. It's when we yes, eventually you can be Oprah level and be broad to everybody, but I don't think, as an example, Oprah spends an enormous amount of time creating messaging and storytelling focused towards straight men. Fair statement, right? She doesn't actually, I'm sure there are lots of straight men that actually what, but those are not her target audience. And thinking about who it is, we are the product of you that you are teaching other people how to buy. It's how I want you to think about this. And so all of the questions around that that you would normally ask if you were selling any product is where to focus, and why the other person would care about the product is always the key question. And then last but not least, again, don't do this in a bubble. Like, don't do this in just your own head, because as Samantha just got a bit of a check on, what other people hear and what you hear are often two different things. And because so often, and only because we've got a lot of ladies on here, As women, we are taught that it is unfeminine to brag. We are taught that it is not good to color outside the lines and be different. And not that we're not taught to be ambitious. I think we are. But that whole comfort area of being original, but then also recognizable is a place that I think we all should push ourselves harder. So last piece on this is this last idea. So in the world of marketing, and again, you are the product in this, and this is you are teaching people. There's also a concept that I talk about called reach and frequency. It's actually a marketing metric that companies have been using for years to figure out how big of an audience do I need to reach out to, and how often do I need to tell them. Now, on the how big an audience is, as an example, and I know we don't have these numbers, if I was the CMO of Pampers, for example, and I wanted to move, I don't know, 100 of the newborn Pampers diapers this weekend out of Safeway stores, I actually have mathematics on my side where I know that if we do this much advertising, it builds this much awareness to this many people who could potentially have newborn babies who could then buy my product. Like there's an entire mathematical calculation that happens behind the scenes. For those of you that have watched that new documentary about social media, this is a lot of what they're talking about behind the scenes. You also, while you don't have access to all that data to figure out what is your actual math, you also need to figure out about the math. So is, as an example, your goal to get a new job? Is your goal to teach your network who you are, what you're all about? Is your goal, it doesn't matter what your goal is, it's actually sitting here saying, like, how big is the audience that I need to teach about me? Now, if it's within your own company and you're just trying to teach your boss, well, then your audience is your boss. Now, I would also say that the people around your audience, your boss, are a secondary layer of people to teach, because collaboration is never a solo thing. And then potentially the skip level. Are you teaching the people above your boss because they often tell your boss what to do? Or as an example, and I think this is where it gets really tough, if you're trying to pivot your career and start a new industry, your reach actually needs to be broader because you might not know where there's going to be a really good fit. And you're actually having to teach people a whole new, like all the people you know all need reteaching. And then people who don't know you need teaching. And so again, I come back to like, what is your math? How are you being intentful there? So that's the reach and how big is your audience. And then it's the frequency. I have a really horrifying data point to share with you just to help you think about frequency. It takes somebody hearing something no less than 7 times for them to remember it. 7. So as I throw this out to you, like after today's show, like think about for just a second, how many times have you been intentfully clear with just your manager, your boss, somebody who has the ability to impact your future? How many times have you been clear about who the future you is? Ooh, thank you, Tendai. It is repeated exposure. It's the same thing. And so what is your opportunity for doing that? Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of teaching people verbally how to do that. Obviously. Because I think once you start having a conversation, the brain captures it. It's also why one of my favorite questions is the what did you hear question after you've shared something. Because 2 things happen when you do the what did you hear question. One, you actually get to hear what landed. So often the first question people ask after you share something is, what do you think? That's asking somebody if they like it or not. Well, we shouldn't be asking somebody if they like something, if we don't know if they understand it first. And what did you hear actually gets you understanding. The other bonus thing it does is if they heard you correctly, if they really understood what it is you were saying, well, by having them say it back to you out loud, they just got a practice session on how to talk about why you're awesome. Very key part of the process. And as much as I talk about this endlessly, I was out with my squad of awesome lady people friends this past weekend, fully masked up, socially distanced, all of the good things. And I haven't seen many of them in over a year. And I thought they've all seen the sequins, they've all seen the stuff that I've been sharing. I thought they all understood what I was doing these days. And lo and behold, I had to spend an afternoon reteaching my own network who I am, what I'm doing, and how people can engage with me. So as much as I sit here and I say, look, go out and do this, I also drink my own Kool-Aid and you have to remember, are you reteaching somebody who already knows you, or are you actually going out to new people? And that teaching can happen in frequency in more than just audio. I'm a really big fan of the email signature at the bottom of your emails. For any of you who've received emails from me, you'll know that there's a whole mess of stuff down there because people do look. I even beta test language down there just to see what people react to, because you never know. I'm also on social media, a really, really big fan of being intentful there. This is not, and I'm sure Samantha would agree with you, a spray and pray methodology. Figure out which platforms you want to teach what into. And so as an example, yes, I'm on Instagram. I don't do anything. I did a little bit of professional stuff there. And I was like, you know what? This is not the space or the audience that I want to have this conversation in. So I don't do it there. I do have epic conversations about this whole concept of the future you on both LinkedIn and Twitter, because they make sense for what it is I'm trying to do. And yes, my younger audience is all like, when are you going to get on TikTok? I don't know if any of you guys have been down that rabbit hole, but oh my gosh. But you've got social media is a platform. We all have the ability to be a publisher. And so if that's not comfortable for you, maybe writing an opinion piece is good for you. There are endless places you can share. Medium is certainly one of them. LinkedIn is another. Thrive Global is another one. It's Ariana Huffington's new company. Anybody can publish on there too. Just the act of publishing, you can start your own newsletter. If you're interested in it, you could start a podcast or a YouTube series. Again, it depends on who it is you want to talk to and why. My guess is most of you are in corporate professional roles. For those folks, like, I really recommend LinkedIn and Twitter, LinkedIn and Medium as really great platforms for sharing your point of view. For those of you, so like in Samantha's case, because she's trying to get new clients, yeah, a podcast, a YouTube channel, actually publishing on other platforms is really helpful, but it's actually doing that consistently. I'm also, and I think this is the most undervalued way to set a first impression with somebody. When you are connecting with somebody on LinkedIn, I get lost in them all the time. Don't just hit that connect button and go, oop, let's just hope they connect. You have the opportunity with every single person you connect with to send a personal note. Tell them why. In your personal note, say, I wanted to connect with you. This is why. This is who I am and what I'm all about. And here's what I'm going to do with it. So are you going to read their post? Were you connecting for a reason? Whatever it is. That first digital impression is just as important as that first audio impression. And so there are endless ways that you can really think about that as you go through, beyond just your LinkedIn profile and your resume, which should be up to date. Although, yes, if you haven't heard it before, I think resumes are dumb because they only talk about your past. They do not talk about your potential. If any of what I've just shared about putting content out there worries you, don't, because I look at writing and sharing content. While yes, it is, I mean, I always take the advice of the don't say anything publicly that you wouldn't want on the front cover of the New York Times. That is still a truism. I'm guessing that is not an issue with this group. But both LinkedIn, Medium, or even a blog are really great opportunities to practice the craft of sharing your ideas. And I will openly admit, I went back in time recently. I've been writing an article every week for the last, I think we're up to a little over 3 years now. I do not which I think I get next week off. It's Thanksgiving. I haven't missed it. It has been my first articles were awful, and I'm kind of horrified that they're still out there, but I still keep them out there because you never know. It's been the most useful tool for helping me really start to codify and make the language around what it is I want to teach people much more cohesive and clear. It also challenges me as an individual to sit here, and I'm constantly, like, I go out and hike quite regularly in the hills behind my house. That is my creative time where I'm sitting here going, like, what problems am I trying to solve? How can I solve problems in the future? So that while the who am I and what am I promoting is consistent, the ideas and the content is constant. And once you start that practice, the writer's block, the comfort and confidence in putting that information out there, all of those things start to really get much, much easier. So you will know that I love throwing out a bit of accountability. We're going to go around the room really quickly. So you've gotten some ideas on what you could do. Now my question is what are you going to do to help yourself self-promote some more? So Luann, you are on my screen to my right. I'm gonna hold you accountable. Tell everybody, I just want you to pick one thing little that you can do before the end of next week to promote you.
I'm taking my newsletter and I'm going to convert it to a LinkedIn article and I'm going to post it.
Yay. Will you make sure that you tag me so that I can reshare it for you as well? Because I will
sure.
absolutely do that.
Thank you.
Awesome. Lisa, what are you going to do?
I think I'll start with saying I'm awesome more frequently.
Love that.
Verbally. And then also just reminding my friends why I'm awesome.
Fantastic. Liz, what about you?
I think I'm going to take some time to really think about the 3 things I want people to remember about me. And I think focusing more on my goals and how I want to get there will help me frame that some more.
Wonderful. Janet, what are you going to do before this time next week?
I'm going to spend some time this weekend writing down a list of my accomplishments and achievements to remind myself why I'm so awesome.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you share one now? Why are you awesome?
Because I just get things done.
Kylie, can we dig up the why you shouldn't be known as a get shit done girl article and send it to Janet so she can have it? FYI, and a future show, if you want me to do a future show on the get shit done girls, it is awesome, but it's why they pay you. It's actually how you think that is awesome, not the result. So just a heads up there.
Cool,
I'm gonna have to Arjita, am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
Awesome. So what are you going to do before this time next week?
Actually, I will do something today because I'm about to connect someone to LinkedIn. That is in my plan. But I was thinking just to connect and hope. But now I will craft the message why. So that
Yay! You are going to make me incredibly happy because I get lots of, God, please don't ever send I see we have connections that are same. Oh, awful. Jen, what's on your radar to do to self-promote next week?
I'm with Liz. I need to get a little bit more clarity on what I feel like my 3 things are.
I'm going to put you on the spot because I did it to Jana. What's one of your 3 things?
The fact that I can see the person and the work and business, and by doing that, I'm able to create better outcomes.
That's a really, just FYI, is a big thought, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I had a big question. Whenever I have a big question bubble over my head, I'm like, what is that? It means that alone is a thing. So maybe a bit of a deep dive on that one. Samantha, you have already kind of ticked the box today, but what are you going to do between now and next week to...
Yeah, I think I need to plan a series of articles to hit LinkedIn. about why you need a CMO.
Awesome. Tendai?
Okay, like this has been amazing once again. I don't know how much more fairy godmother magic I can take in 48 hours. I am going to really dig deep into your 7 magical questions, and really start to write down the answers to those questions, so that the unique value proposition is created, right? The unique language, and I can use that in my communications.
Okay, looking forward to that. Dawn, you are awesome. And I love that we have a new hair color today.
Thank you. Thank
Kind
you.
of part of the fun. We were pink last week, folks, by the way.
Absolutely. Thank you. I am going to get more practiced at talking about myself. So practicing out loud in front of the mirror.
Fantastic.
I appreciate that tip today. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. I tell FYI, I have a very patient husband because the crazy exists at home as well. I tell him how I am genius at least once a day because he is my practice space. Now he laughs at me most of the time and he's like, I told him I was a no code genius last night because I am. And he was like, I don't even know what those words mean. And I'm like, it doesn't matter because I believe it. It's really important. And then Lindsay, last but not least, what are you going to do?
So I've been in sort of like high stakes negotiation / interviewing lately, and like hilariously so. I'm just like, I'm absolutely going to be this person who I know I can be, and I'm just going to bring it, right? So, but in doing that, one of the things I've forgotten is like about is the things that I have accomplished previously, I just haven't done for a while. And so I need to pull together some of the stories that are entertaining and educational, much like the story that you told about Oprah. We all obviously agreed with you about Oprah, but now we have the vision of the sandstorm and the Bedouins in the tent listening to Oprah. So I need to come up with that for impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Somebody shared the other day, I think it was Brene Brown. Oh, such a good teacher.
Mm-hmm.
She reminded us that in the absence of data, people use stories. And so when you don't have data in a conversation, I mean, data is great, I think, in many ways. Stories are really powerful because you're all going to remember that Oprah story really clearly. I know I've remembered it for years and it's not even my story and I can still tell it pretty well. Now I've told it a lot, but stories are incredibly powerful. And it's the reason also why, if you think about it, why we all hate the movie version of our favorite books. Because the picture you painted in your own head was way better than the picture that was painted on the screen. I was a big fan of Outlander until they made the TV show, and now I'm all like, no, it's all bad. Love me a good time travel book. This is a little insight into me. Okay, so before we move forward, Kylie, can I ask you to come join the party again? She's been running the show behind the scenes here. It is, now we've got an accountability. Can we roll our prize wheel? So for those of you that are new to the Live with Joanna show, if you come to one of these shows, in the specific ones, your name is thrown in the bucket and somebody is eligible to win a one-on-one session with me and we can talk about whatever it is you want to do. So Kylie, you're the boss.
Here we go.
Cool. I feel like we should have one of those, if you have epileptic somethings in there.
A warning.
That we should do that. So Lisa, congratulations.
Yay.
We will be sending you information on how to schedule your session after the show today. But changed the game. For those of you, we went around the room and had accountability. We have an email at hello@the-amplify lab. It's the same one that you got your meeting invitation to this show to. Do what you said you would do. Tell us what happened and send it back to us. And we will, whether you show up or not, throw your name in the bucket for next week for the challenge. So if you do the thing, we will throw your name in the hat for one of the prizes. So just a heads up with that. Also, talking of upcoming activities, just a heads up for you that we have, and I, of course, I'm pulling them up, a bunch of shows coming up. The one next week is, I don't remember, and I am pulling it up so I can remember, which is terrible. Here I am filling the gap. Yeah, so so next show is Friday, December 4th. We're taking a little time off for Thanksgiving. It is our standard welcome to the world of Joanna, Potentialist and Fairy Godmother show. Being confident is the first step. Why are you awesome? You are, for those of you that are new, this is a great show to come to because I cover some of the standards. Tendai actually got to go to a version of it last night where I will do one of my famous transformations on one of the audience members. It's a great opportunity for if you have friends who need a gentle, swift kick in the butt on how they need to talk about why they're awesome for them to get an introduction. And then through December, we've got one show about creating your plan B and why I think even in this world of chaos, we all need one. And then we're going to be ending the year talking about how to kick off 2021. We have 4 months of shows in the hopper starting in January, plus a new elements where we're going to have featured guests. And we're going to have guest interviews with other folks. So lots and lots of good stuff teed up for 2021, because I don't know about the rest of you, but I am done with 2020 ruling my life as opposed to the other way around. So we can stop all of that. But I would love to hear from you. Hang on a second. Let me pull it back up. Present. Why are you not showing? Oh, there it is. You tell me, what is it you want us to talk about in these shows? Well, we'll just pull this up. Here we go. So your second question is, what other topics would you like me to cover? So just type in whatever answer. It's a free text field. We would love to hear from you on what other things you would like folks to cover. Oh, and it just decided to stop. Well, that's not going to work, which is fine. Things happen. If you have any particular topics or ideas, either drop them in the chat or send us a note at hello@the-amplify lab. We are always curious to hear. I think, yes, that is, oh, and I've run over, which is why I should be over. So I just want to remind all of you, thank you for coming. It's always great to see your awesome voices and hear your awesome voices and hear what it is you have questions about. Invite friends. We'd love to see more folks who could do with a little bit of the fairy godmother magic around. And just a reminder, you are magic. Every single one of you in your own unique and special way. And I know I can see it when I chat with each and every one of you. I hope you can see it, because I think we need to tell everybody else what it is, because it's that magic shenanigans in the future that everybody is looking to play with you on. So thank you for coming. You guys are awesome. Shoot us notes with any questions you have, and I will see you at the next show. Bye-bye, guys. Ultimately, we're here to help you figure out how to teach other people who the future you is, so that you can be you in the future. Because the clearer you are about who you are, what you want, and teach other people why that's awesome, the more likely you get to be you. I know, it's a bit of a circle. I'm Joanna, your potentialist and fairy godmother, and I wish you the very best. Thanks for coming.